Arslan Hidayat, come in here on helping us understand what has happened in Xinjiang in the past 5 years. Wang Zhuzheng, the man in charge, has now, of course, been given this charge of Tibet. But what did he do in Xinjiang? Just tell our viewers, just inform us about it.
So it's not just the last 5 years. We're talking CCP invasion since, we could go on for hundreds of years, but if you talk about CCP invasion since 1949, oppression ranging from the occupation of home and land, indoctrination in the camps, destruction of culture sites such as mosques, the banning of books, language in schools. So our Uyghur language stripped away from schools, similar to what's happening in Tibet from kindergartens all the way to university, false imprisonment in prisons and concentration camps, removal of children to state-run orphanages, torture, rape, gang rape, and this is not just of women, of men as well, slave labor and death. So when we talk about what Wang was doing, Wang was the head of the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps, which has been described by the US as a paramilitary structure of the CCP. And they were directly responsible, or they are still directly responsible for Uyghur forced or slave labor. And they are directly managed or centered by the Politburo in Beijing, not necessarily the Xinjiang authorities. So we have this education. Why, according to China, the Uyghurs are being educated is because we are not Chinese enough. As one of our Tibetan brothers mentioned before, that China wants a unified populace going down the route of ethno-nationalism, where you have to be proud and act like you're Chinese. Be proud and boast that you're Chinese, and if you are not, if you do not fall into that Han Chinese scope, then you are essentially genocided. And when we say genocide, it's not our definition of genocide; it's definition under the meaning of the Geneva Convention. And so when you look at these people going into these camps, China is telling the world, these Uyghurs are uneducated, we need to move them into the 21st century. But the people actually going into these camps, have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctorates. They work at universities, they're actors, they're singers, they're dancers, they're engineers. So these people are educated. Some of them, if not most of them, have worked for the Chinese government for 20, 30, 40 years, who were on the verge of this retirement, and some had already retired. And so you got to think, what was wrong with their education when they were educated by the Chinese government in the first place? So this narrative that the Uyghurs need to be educated because we are somehow prone to terrorism is absolutely false, because they were educated in that system. And through this, again, they are trying to destroy not the Uyghurs, not just culturally, because there is a cultural aspect of this, there's a cultural genocide of this, but also now physically. We have heard from former concentration camp detainees that they are malnourished, that they go through sleep deprivation, food deprivation. They are going through indoctrination classes, but they've actually said that the brainwashing actually doesn't work. But basically, through that torture, through that deprivation, many people seem to disappear and die in the camps. God knows how many people have died. And the estimations of the numbers in these camps are anywhere between very conservative numbers, minimum 1 million. Some have suggested upwards of 6, 7, 8 million, but it's very hard to say. Last week, there was a call from 46 countries who are against these policies in China, calling for unfettered access into the region. And we've always said, if China have nothing to hide, if there really is no oppression, and everyone is happy living under the CCP regime, why can't people go in with unfettered access? When people do seem to go in, how come they're always toured around, given a show of Uyghurs dancing and the sort of the superficial parts of the culture only seem to exist. So you'll see people cooking and dressing and dancing, but all the other parts are very much suppressed. And we call on the international community to do more. And you've asked the question throughout your show today, which is a very prominent question. Why is China, doing this, and why isn't there enough pressure? Because there isn't enough pressure. We are not there are sanctions, but we're not sanctioning them enough. We got to hit them. We got to hit them where it hurts, and that's the economy. So if we look at some examples of the past, when we think about Nazi Germany, or when we think more recently about apartheid South Africa, these countries, boycotted them in sport.
Yeah.
The South Africans say their rugby union team wasn't allowed to play in the World Cup. Their Olympic team wasn't allowed to, participate in the Olympics. But instead, what's happening now? We are giving the chance for China to host the Olympics once more. We are giving them a stage to legitimize the genocide, legitimize their oppression, and in turn, there seems to be a thing where the world or other countries want a piece of the economic pie. The looting of natural resources, of gold, of coal. Places like Tibet and East Turkestan, the only reason China has become China, a big part of that is because of its natural resources. And as I mentioned before, with Wang as head of the XPCC, they are much involved in the cotton industry, where most of the Uyghur forced labor is.
Okay.
And so every time you buy a piece of clothing, you are, in essence, indirectly supporting concentration camps, his regime, or his part in that regime.
Okay. Now, we've all read these reports, Arslan, of China trying to destroy the Uyghur culture as well, be it camps or banning of languages, pairing of children with Han children. What has really been happening in Xinjiang, and is it still continuing till date today?
Yeah, well, if we talk about that aspect, we have the closing down, the dozing of mosques, the banning of the religion. We also have, as you mentioned, the banning of the language, children being stripped away from their families and put into what they call boarding schools or orphanages, where they are only taught the Chinese language. They are stripped away from their culture. And we also have another aspect of this, where 1.1 million Chinese officials are brought into the homes and living with Uyghur families in order to not just surveil them, but to check up on what's happening at home. Besides these camps, you have the Uyghurs living in an open-air prison. And so the program is essentially called living together, cooking together, eating together, learning together, and sleeping together. Mm-hmm. So we've had reports where Uyghurs are paired with Han Chinese, a relative, essentially. So especially if you're a male, you're paired with a female. If you're a female, you're paired with a male, and you are doing these things together. And we have heard reports of rape where teenage girls are essentially fall pregnant as well. We have heard of suicides because of these issues. And unfortunately, one of the ways that the Chinese government finds out who is doing illegal activity, and when I mean illegal activity, speaking the Uyghur language, practicing Islam, teaching your children Uyghur culture, is that they interview the children. And obviously, you can't teach or you can't tell your children what to say, so they'll go, hey, young kid, does your father pray? Do your parents read Quran? What do they teach you? What language do you speak at home? And through that, many Uyghurs have been arrested and taken to these camps because they have been affected by the disease of Islam or the disease of the Uyghur culture. And so they need to be educated for a period of time, and so that they can go back and become a proud Han Chinese person. So this is continuing.
All right. Final question then to you, Arslan. We did see a basketball star, Enes Kanter of the Boston Celtics, take a very strong stand against China. He did face some repercussions by China, but he stuck with his stand. The team also faced repercussions, of course, which is China's tactic very often. What is your message to the world and global celebrities looking at this incident?
With Enes Kanter, as far as from what I've learned, is that he has taken some sort of punishment as well. As far as I've learned, he was not made to play the last game with the Celtics. He wasn't put on, as far as I know. And these players, when they make a stance like that, they're risking their own careers, their own lives, their own money as well. But a genocide is happening. I don't think people fully grasp the word or the term or or the aspect of what a genocide is. It is literally going on, and we need to forget about money. We need to, be human, and not just trade off, economy or trade deals, versus a genocide. And we need to have influential people like Anas Kantara and others to take a stance. But if the bodies that they work for, essentially, like the MBA and like their governments, also worked as supportive, then that would open up the floodgates a bit more. We only have a few celebrities, sort of joining that stage, Anas Kantara and very few others. But again, it's the repercussions, the supposed repercussions that seem to come. We're not sure if they're going to be that strong. But in essence, with their MBA, their main fan base and the money that they get is from the United States. They shouldn't be so afraid of, losing a little bit, perhaps 20-30% of the China market. And people need to do more. There is a genocide. It's real, defined under the Geneva Convention, and people need to take a stance against it.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.